Hi Bible Art Journalers, this is my second video about using napkins in your Bible. And in this video, I'm actually using the single ply white backing of the napkin. In the previous video, I used the front with the designer piece. And all I've done is laid it down here on a placemat, put some water on it, and I'm dabbing some watercolor on. And then you'll see I'll start picking it up here and moving it around to get some of the color that's beading up on the placemat to the other side. And it just gives it a different technique if you use less water, different look. And so I tried both ways to just get sort of a tie-dye effect on this. And I decided I would just hand rip this. I wanted a heart shape, so I started with a piece that was going to be large enough to fashion a heart out of. Put my Liquitex matte gel medium down on the page and then put this large piece. And I'll show you how I used this paintbrush to sort of draw the edge of the heart, and that the paper is so thin that when it's wet it's very easy to tear it. And so then I just used my paintbrush to get the water down in the shape I wanted at the edge, and then I used my gift card to scrape away the paper that I didn't want to stay. And when you add the water, it sort of reactivates that matte gel medium underneath, and it lets it up and lets it go. And then I can just kind of rub the paper off that I don't want. And so I just went on ahead around the edge of the heart um, until I had the shape that I wanted and had all the extra paper off of my page. I applied more matte gel medium to my page, and then I just ripped little pieces of the colors that I liked and placed them around the page to give the page some texture and color and sort of a patchwork effect. Once I had everything where I wanted it, I went ahead and just touched it up a bit with some water to reactivate the matte gel medium on the page to make sure I had all the air bubbles out of the middle and everything smoothed down and all my edges that were hanging off the page or were bigger than I wanted them smoothed out. Then I just dried it really thoroughly with my heat gun so that I could apply my second layer of matte gel medium over the top. Once I had a smooth coat, I went ahead and heat dried it again, and I'll show you the finished page at the end of the video. I talked about separating the plies of the napkin in the first napkin video that I did. So here you'll see I'll pull the first layer, which is the design layer, and set that aside. And then sometimes if it's difficult to get the other plies apart because of the perforation holding them together at the edge, if you just tear a little piece, then it will help you to see the two plies a little better. Now with just one ply ready to go, I'm going to use another technique to add watercolor to this. And this time, instead of applying the paint directly to the napkin, I'm going to use this plastic sheeting and I'm going to apply the paint to the plastic, which will give me time to move the paint around and do some color blending and get things the way I want them before I put the napkin down and it soaks up the color. I start with just the little bit of water that's on the plastic sheeting. And when you use less water, you get this very defined splotchy look. If you want more of a blended uh, ombre effect, you're going to want to add some more water and let the paint run together in the paper. Over time, the paint will move where the water is, and if it's not moving to your liking, you can always just continue to add more water. And you see me patting gently here. That's to soak up some of the paint that's still on the plastic sheeting underneath. But you want to be very careful when you're handling this when it's wet because it becomes very delicate and can rip very easily. So here I'm just picking it up and kind of moving it around to get any of the excess paint off of the mat. Once I liked the way the colors were blended, I went ahead and did a quick blow dry with my heat gun. This paper is going to be so much easier to handle and work with if it's dry. So here I cut along a couple of the creases of the napkin, which helped me get a kind of nice straight line for that inside edge. And I'm going to use my matte gel medium and coat the entire page, which is why I have both my facing page protected and my piece underneath the page that I'm working on to protect the rest of the book in case I should go over the edge. I very carefully laid this down into the matte gel medium, starting only putting pressure at the center, and then I used my clean gift card to swipe out and try and get as many of the bubbles out as I could. When you get this wet and let it dry, you see these kind of gauzy, wrinkly effect that happens with it. And I actually really like that texture, and it doesn't seem to make it too thick to where you can't still see through it for the words underneath. Although I had decided that once I got this in place, I wanted to scrape away some of the paper where the verses that I had journaled on the facing page and the verse that I was highlighting on this page so that it was very clear. And so I used the same technique here to rub the paper away by getting it wet again and then using my gift card to remove the layer of paper that I didn't want there. I think this is a pretty creative use of something that you were just going to throw in the trash, and it adds just such an incredible different texture to your page, almost like they're wrapped in linen, but you still can see through them pretty well, and if not, just work around the words like I'm doing here. Now I had this small section between the verses, and I'm sorry that my Bible had scooted down in the screen frame and I didn't notice, so it's a little hard to see, but right there at the bottom of the screen you can see that I wiped some of my matte gel medium on with my finger, and then I ripped this little tiny strip of the paper because I actually ended up taking off more than I wanted and decided to put a little bit back on. And that's just how easy this is I was able to put that matte gel medium down, put this down. I added a little water to soften it again and then went in with my card and very delicately just scraped off so that you could see that bottom line of the verse and the top line of the next section and leave that nice little strip of color in between. Once I had everything where I wanted it and my edges cleaned up, I went ahead and heat dried it again before I added my second coat of matte gel medium. You could let this air dry, but for the sake of time, I love my heat gun for doing a quick dry on this page. Once it was dry, I went ahead and pulled my mask out from behind, and I'm just going to trim around the edge with my tiny scissors. And you could probably rip the edge if you wanted to, or use that technique again where you use the water and the card to get it off the edge. I thought I would go ahead and try with the scissors to get it right close along the edge, and I ended up having a little difficulty with this. Got part of it right, and then ended up doing some of the scraping technique at the end anyway. Even with these very sharp scissors, for some reason when you're just dealing with one ply, it's very hard to cut. It wants to just slide out of the scissors or sideways to where you don't get, it doesn't cut easily. And I can't really explain it, but that's one of the reasons why if you want to cut your napkins to have straight edges, you'll want to do that while it still has two or three plies because it's just going to be easier, stiffer to cut, and it won't get away from you. I used a little yellow watercolor to highlight those verses that I have peeking out from under the texture. Here are the finished pages. I used my illustrated faith pen to draw the knot on the heart and also do the hand lettering here in Proverbs 6. In my page in Galatians 5, I used my illustrated faith pen to underline the verses, my Faber-Castell Pitt artist pens to do the brush lettering, and my Uniball Signo gel pen to add the white dots to the letters.